Imagine you're a sailor in 1872. You spot a ship on the horizon. Its sails are up. Its course is steady. But something is wrong. As you get closer, you realize no one is on deck. No one is answering your calls. You climb aboard and find breakfast still sitting on the table. A child's toys are scattered in the captain's cabin. The lifeboat is gone. But everything else, every last coat and cufflink, every navigation tool, every barrel of cargo is exactly where it should be. 10 people vanished from that ship. And in over 150 years, nobody has ever found out why. This is the story of the Mary Celeste. And the real answer is far stranger than any ghost story you've heard. Your brain wants a villain. Pirates, maybe. Or a mutiny. Something with blood and violence. Something that fits the shape of a horror movie. But the evidence doesn't cooperate. There was no sign of struggle. No blood. No weapons drawn. The ship's cargo, 1,700 barrels of raw alcohol, was untouched. Valuables were still in drawers. Whatever happened on the Mary Celeste happened fast, and it happened without a fight. That absence of violence is exactly what makes this case impossible to close. Let's go back to the beginning. On November 7th, 1872, Captain Benjamin Briggs set sail from New York Harbor. He was 37 years old, an experienced mariner from a long line of sea captains. He brought his wife, Sarah, and their 2-year-old daughter, Sophia. He brought a crew of 7, all described in the historical record as competent, sober men. This wasn't a ship of desperate criminals or reckless amateurs. It was, by every account, one of the safest crews you could put to sea. 1 month later, on December 4th, a different ship called the Dei Gratia spotted the Mary Celeste drifting nearly 400 miles east of the Azores. Her sails were partly set, in disarray, but catching wind. She was moving, unmanned, like a ghost with somewhere to be. The captain of the Dei Gratia sent men aboard. What they found became one of the most examined crime scenes in maritime history. The ship's log had its last entry dated 10 days earlier. 10 days! And in those 10 days, nothing had gone catastrophically wrong, at least not on paper. The last recorded position placed the Mary Celeste near Santa Maria Island. When she was found, she was hundreds of miles further along, roughly on course, still moving under a scrap of sail. Someone or something had kept her drifting in the right general direction the entire time. Doesn't that feel almost intentional? Here's where it gets strange. The ship's single lifeboat was missing, along with a rope that had likely been used to tow it. That single fact has anchored nearly every serious theory for a century and a half. Something made 10 people, including a toddler, abandon a perfectly seaworthy ship in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. What could possibly be worse than staying? Frederick Solly Flood, the Attorney General who led the official inquiry in Gibraltar, initially suspected foul play. He accused the crew of the Dei Gratia of piracy, of murdering the Mary Celeste's passengers for salvage money. It was a tidy theory. It was also almost certainly wrong. No physical evidence ever tied the Dei Gratia's crew to any crime, and the courts eventually released them, though not before the accusation cast a permanent shadow of scandal over the entire case. So what actually happened? Historians and scientists have spent generations chasing an answer, and 3 theories keep rising to the top. The first is the alcohol vapor theory. The Mary Celeste was carrying 1,700 barrels of denatured alcohol, industrial spirits meant for fortifying wine. In 2005, chemist Andrea Sella at University College London recreated the ship's hold conditions and tested what might happen if some of those barrels leaked. His experiment produced a visible vapor cloud and something close to a small explosion, enough noise and force to genuinely terrify a crew without leaving behind fire damage or scorch marks. Picture it. A groaning sound from the cargo hold. A hiss you can't explain. Smoke that looks like the ship is about to become a bomb. Would you stay below deck to investigate, or would you get everyone into the lifeboat first and sort it out from a safe distance? The second theory involves the ship's pump. Investigator and documentary filmmaker Anne McGregor spent years reconstructing the voyage using replica instruments and historical weather data. Her research suggests the Mary Celeste's bilge pump may have been malfunctioning, and that the crew, unable to accurately gauge how much water had flooded the hold, may have believed the ship was sinking when it wasn't. A false alarm, in other words. A captain trusting faulty information, making the only reasonable decision available to him, and getting it catastrophically wrong. The third theory is simpler and darker. A sudden squall, a rogue wave, a moment of panic during a storm that passed before the Dei Gratia arrived and left no trace behind. The sea doesn't need a conspiracy to kill people. It only needs a few careless seconds, a misjudged wave, and a captain who guesses wrong when there's no time left to guess twice. Notice what all three theories share. They don't require monsters. They don't require pirates or aliens or sea creatures. They require ordinary people making a reasonable choice under extraordinary fear and being wrong about the one thing that mattered most. That should unsettle you more than any ghost story could. Briggs was not a reckless man. Records show he inspected the ship himself before departure and even considered postponing the trip after noticing the cargo's fumes. He brought his own family aboard, which is not something a captain does if he suspects danger. So whatever pulled 10 people off that ship overrode a genuinely careful man's judgment in seconds. What does it take to make someone that careful abandon a still floating vessel for an open lifeboat with a 2-year-old in his arms? The ship's charts and the captain's papers were gone, but the crew's clothing, even a sewing machine in the cabin, were left untouched. That's not the pattern of a robbery. It's the pattern of people who expected to come back. They didn't think they were dying. They thought they were surviving. Because here's the thing about fear. It doesn't wait for proof. Your ancestors and you are wired to react to threat first and analyze it second. A loud noise from below deck doesn't get a calm investigation. It gets a decision made in half a second, using the fastest signal your body has. Get away, right now. Figure out the rest later. Captain Briggs likely made the most rational choice available to him with the information he had. He was almost certainly wrong, and he had less than a minute to decide. Author Arthur Conan Doyle, who would go on to invent Sherlock Holmes, wrote a fictionalized version of the Mary Celeste story just 4 years later, and it's a large part of why the myth exploded into popular culture. His version added a psychic, a vengeful crew member, a supernatural twist. None of it was true, but it stuck because a mystery without a monster doesn't spread the way a ghost story does. People don't retell faulty pump reading around a campfire, which raises the real question buried underneath this whole case. Why do you want it to be something stranger than a chemical leak or a misread gauge? Part of it is timing. The Mary Celeste was found during the golden age of spiritualism, when seances were mainstream entertainment across America and Europe. Newspapers ran wild with theories about sea monsters and curses. Nobody wanted to hear that a pump gauge might have malfunctioned. A monster is a story you can tell your children at night. A malfunctioning gauge is just Tuesday. And maybe the true answer is too close to home. It isn't a story about a haunted ship. It's a story about how thin the line is between a normal Tuesday and total catastrophe, and how the people inside a failing system were doing their absolute best the entire time. That's a much harder story to sit with than a curse. The Mary Celeste herself didn't get a peaceful ending either. She changed hands more than a dozen times, earning a reputation as a cursed vessel sailors refused to work. Her final voyage came in 1885, when her captain deliberately ran her aground off Haiti in an insurance fraud scheme. She burned on the reef, sinking into the same ocean that made her famous for what it took from her. Weather records from late November 1872 show squalls strong enough to churn the alcohol barrels, strong enough to make a pump gauge read unreliably, strong enough to convince an experienced captain his ship was sinking. None of these facts is dramatic alone, but stack them together at the wrong hour, and you get a decision that costs 10 lives without a single villain in the room. So think again about that empty deck. The breakfast still on the table, going cold. The child's toys scattered in the cabin, exactly where small hands had left them. 10 people who made one decision in one terrifying moment that we still can't fully reconstruct. Not because the truth is unknowable, but because the truth is uncomfortably ordinary. Fear made a call. The call was final, and the ship just kept sailing, carrying nothing but the silence they left behind. Now imagine you're the sailor again, climbing aboard a ship that sailed itself into history, still trying to make sense of a table set for breakfast that no one ever ate. What would you have believed in that same moment of fear? Would you have trusted the noise from below deck, or trusted the ship still floating steady beneath your feet?